The dark road, the endless highway, the asphalt winding along the gentle waves of the land. Under the dim light of the headlights, the road surface appeared like a strip of gray cloth, shining in the quiet night. The shadows of the trees along the road stood still like black silhouettes, unable to see the details clearly, only creating vague and ghostly shapes under the passing light. The early morning air still had a slight chill, making the space even more lonely and quiet. There was no sound except the steady hum of the car's engine, a sound that echoed like a deep rhythm through the vast, silent space. These deserted roads, where only the light from Adam's car illuminated, were a world completely separate from everything around them. Adam, the man sitting behind the wheel, stared intently ahead. His face remained calm, his eyes occasionally glancing at the sparse streetlights, the dark shadows in the distance that he could not see clearly. He was a man in his 30s, unremarkable in appearance but possessed a firmness and determination in every action. He had been driving for 5 hours. The straight roads seemed to stretch on forever, and although his body was starting to feel tired, he still tried to maintain his alertness. Driving at night had become a habit for him, and in this quiet space he felt a sense of peace, a sense of separation from the world around him. The late-night air seemed to stretch on forever, and Adam could not help but admit that there was something appealing about the silence of this deserted road. He loved the feeling of being alone on these roads, where traffic was sparse, and everything seemed peaceful. However, the silence also made time seem to slow down, and drowsiness began to creep in. He knew that if he wasn't careful, a short nap could put him in a dangerous situation. Adam thinking to himself, "Just a little more, maybe we'll make it to Florida before the sun rises. Don't let sleepiness come too soon. Can't fall asleep here, the road is too empty." He sighed, looked through the rearview mirror, feeling the space around him narrow. There was nothing but the light of the car reflecting on the road, the shadows of trees looming in the distance. Although the light from the headlights illuminated a short distance ahead, the distance was still a hazy space, unclear where it would lead. Adam was in no hurry, but he still knew that time waited for no one, and the journey was still long. He glanced at the clock, counting the hours to calculate how long it would take to get there. Fatigue began to creep into his body, but he fought it back, not wanting to let sleep overtake him. He needed to stay awake and get to Florida before dawn. That was his only goal. Suddenly, in the distance, he saw a dim light ahead, growing larger. A truck, seemingly coming from the opposite direction, passed him in the darkness. The truck's lights flashed, creating streaks of light that flashed across his vision before it disappeared into the darkness behind him. It was a fleeting moment, but it made Adam feel like something was wrong. A cold feeling came over him, and he couldn't explain why. But it seemed like there was some presence beyond the truck, something invisible, watching him from the darkness. He let out a breath, trying to push those strange thoughts aside. Adam continued driving, but the strange feeling didn't go away. He felt as if an invisible gaze was watching him from the shadows along the road, and the night air was even heavier. His hands tightened on the steering wheel, but he couldn't deny the feeling of anxiety rising in his heart. He tried to stay calm, but his mind kept spinning with thoughts of loneliness on this deserted road. Adam thinking to himself, "It must be just fatigue. There are still 13 hours left. Keep going." But as he continued driving, he couldn't deny that something strange was still happening around him. The road was not only long in space, but also long in the sense of time. Every passing minute seemed to stretch on forever, and Adam couldn't shake off that strange feeling. Dark night and strange encounter. Late at night, the deserted road gradually lost its light. Adam, after a long journey, entered the suburbs, a completely different space from the previous roads. In front of him was a Wendy's parking lot, where there was not a single person, not a single new car. The street lights were weak and sparse, as if trying to illuminate but not strong enough to spread out into the vast space. The night air was so quiet that one could clearly hear the steady hum of the car engine, like a monotonous song against the silence of the universe. Adam slowed down and looked around. The parking lot was empty, with only a few old cars parked quietly, like ghost ships in a deserted land, no different from ghosts lurking in the night. The Wendy's store was dimly lit through the glass, but only a few weak lights came from inside. Those lights created a strange atmosphere, both inviting and making the atmosphere more uneasy. Adam felt a little anxious, although he knew that this was a quiet suburban area. There was no reason to be afraid. In that moment, a feeling of loneliness and fatigue gradually overwhelmed Adam's mind. He had been driving for hours, and although his consciousness was still intact, the loneliness on this deserted road made him feel lost. He looked through the rearview mirror, seeing that the darkness seemed to be getting thicker, covering everything around him. The trees on both sides of the road swayed in the light wind, forming strange shadows. Adam's gaze turned to the parking lot once again. The cars were parked motionless, as if they were waiting for something to come. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the darkness. A strange man stepped out from behind a parked car, looking tired and like he was having some kind of trouble with his vehicle. Adam was slightly startled, his eyes fixed on the man as he approached the car window. The strange man stood facing Adam, smiling a strange smile. His eyes seemed a little hazy, as if he wasn't completely awake. Yet there was something in his eyes that was not easily recognizable, something strange, like a warning sign that Adam couldn't quite place. The man had an indistinct appearance. Not too tall, not too short, just a vague shape in the darkness. He was wearing casual clothes, but his hands seemed to be shaking slightly. Or maybe it was from the cold of the night. Strange man smiling, looking into Adam's car window. "Hello, my car is dead. Can you help me jump the ignition?" The suggestion, though simple and common, made Adam feel uneasy. He had been driving all night and had not seen a soul in the area. How could someone have an accident in a deserted parking lot at this hour? A feeling of unease welled up in his heart. But Adam did not want to jump to conclusions. He turned to look at the man again, his eyes stopping at his wide smile, a smile that made Adam feel as if something was wrong. It was an unnatural smile, not like the smiles Adam was used to seeing. Adam hesitating, looking at the man, but still trying to keep his composure. "I don't have a cable." Adam's words did not seem to faze the other man. He just smiled, gently stepping closer to the window, where the light from Adam's headlights reflected on his face, highlighting the blurry, unclear features. Stranger smiling, slyly, gently. "It's okay. I have a jumper in the trunk. Just help me a little." The way he said, "just help me a little," made Adam feel like something was not quite right. The man's calm words seemed to deceive his guard. However, in Adam's heart, a strange and indescribable feeling grew. He looked at the man, his eyes filled with suspicion. Thoughts swirled in his head. On one side he wanted to help, but on the other side he felt uneasy. This was the first time during this long trip that Adam felt something strange, an inexplicable feeling, as if something dark was lurking in the air. Adam whispering, wondering, "It's this late at night. How is he here?" Adam's mind couldn't calm down at this moment. He turned around and looked around the parking lot. Still nothing strange except the man's car and the uncomfortable silence. He began to wonder why this person had chosen this deserted parking lot at this late hour. The strange feeling kept growing inside him, and his hands tightened on the steering wheel, sweat gradually pouring down his forehead, although he still tried to stay calm. This was not a normal place. And tonight was not a normal night. The surrounding noises seemed to have stopped. Everything was left with a heavy silence. Adam began to feel a presence beyond the man, as if there was an invisible gaze watching him from the darkness. Something elusive, but always present in the air. Cables and strange proposals. The dim light from Adam's headlights illuminated the hood, casting long, jagged shadows on the ground. Adam stepped out of the car, feeling the cold wind whip across his skin, making him feel something strange, as if the world around him had stopped. The night was not only quiet, but also vague, uncertain, and it seemed that more and more things were wrong. Although the feeling of anxiety was still lingering in his heart, Adam decided to open the hood of his car, looking at the engine as a way to check if he could help the other man start his dead car. He did so reluctantly, as if he wanted to finish this and move on, avoiding being stuck in this strange situation for too long. He glanced over the man's face, still unable to understand him, but the pleading in his eyes still made it difficult for Adam to refuse. The strange man approached Adam's car, carefully removing the cable from his trunk. He moved lightly, as if he was used to this. Everything happened in silence, only the sound of metal clanging as he connected the cable ends together. His movements looked quite skillful, but this calmness only increased the strangeness of the current situation. Adam looked at the connected cables, feeling the tension in the air gradually increase. Even though he didn't feel safe, Adam still stood there, looking at the strange man, unable to refuse. His reason knew that there was nothing wrong with helping someone in need in this situation. But a strange feeling arose in his heart, as if something was wrong. He looked around again. The shadows were still silent. Not a sound, not a sign of life other than the other man. It seemed like there was only Adam and the strange man in this dark space. The strange man, after finishing connecting the cables, took a step back and turned to look at Adam. His eyes filled with something unclear. He took a deep breath, as if preparing for the next sentence. The strange man looking into the distance, his voice low, as if there was something mysterious that he was trying to hide. "Can you wait a little longer? You know, my friend told me to try for a few more minutes." The strange man's words made Adam feel even more confused. The sentence was unclear, vague, and seemed to have something hidden behind it. "My friend told me to try for a few more minutes." How could someone need to try again so meticulously in the dead of night? Adam felt as if there was an indescribable tension in the air, as if there was something going on that he couldn't control or understand. Although the man's eyes were still smiling, that smile felt like it was hiding a secret. Adam couldn't help but wonder, which friend of his? Why did he have to wait a few more minutes? And if his car was running, why wouldn't it start now? All of these questions seemed to have no immediate answers. A feeling of confusion and doubt began to invade Adam's mind, and he felt more and more like he was in an inexplicable situation. A situation where nothing was clear or understandable. He watched the stranger's car, listening to the engine as he tried to start it. It was like a never-ending performance, with each failed attempt only adding to the tension. The strange sounds of the rusty engine struggling to start rang out, then died, leaving only an eerie silence. Adam felt like he was part of the situation, caught in a game he couldn't escape. Why was this man here? Why wouldn't his car start when it had been running fine before? And did he really need help? Or was he just part of a bizarre play Adam didn't know about? Adam couldn't stand the silence any longer. He began to feel an invisible pressure, like something was watching him from the shadows, from the old cars parked quietly around the parking lot. The atmosphere was strange, and Adam couldn't figure out what to do. He only knew that every second that passed made him feel more and more uneasy. Something's not right, Adam thought to himself, still watching the man struggling to start the car. Two cars approach. The uneasiness in Adam's heart increased by the second as the lights of two pickup trucks gradually appeared in the distance, breaking the darkness of the night. The sound of their engines echoed in the quiet air, like sudden screeches that made the quiet space around them more tense than ever. Adam turned to look at the cars, feeling uneasy. The two pickup trucks slowly approached, stopping deliberately, just a few meters away from Adam's car. Both cars looked old, and the light from their headlights illuminated the parking lot like lonely rays in the thick darkness. Adam felt a wave of panic rise in his body. He looked into the rearview mirror, trying to assess the situation, but couldn't see clearly what was happening outside. Both cars stopped right behind his car, blocking his way out. There was no other sound except the sound of the slow-moving cars, as if waiting for something. Adam felt suffocated. The space around him suddenly became stifling, as if everything was pressing towards him. Adam's heart was pounding. The sound in his chest was about to burst. Cold sweat began to roll down his forehead. He turned to look at the strange man, who was still standing near his car, but his smile was no longer friendly or gentle like before. That smile now carried a cunning and coldness, as if he had achieved something that Adam could not understand. The strange man's eyes fell on Adam, and then he opened his mouth. His voice was no longer gentle but had become sharper, more threatening. The strange man smiling, but this time the smile was ambiguous. "You see? Everything is ready." Adam, unable to hide his panic, looked forward, trying to find a way out of this situation. The pickup truck stood right in front of him, with no way out. The feeling of being unable to do anything, unable to move, made him feel like he was falling into a trap he couldn't see. Adam panicked, voice trembling. "What's going on? I need to go now." His words echoed in the silent space, like a cry for help, but no one responded. The strange man was still standing there, his eyes still fixed on him, and the pickup trucks behind him seemed to be waiting for some sign from the man. The feeling of being surrounded, as if there was no way out, rose up in Adam. He couldn't understand why there was such a strange situation, why there were strangers appearing in the middle of the night like this, and why everything had become so tense. The night seemed to cover Adam, but in that darkness, there were cold eyes watching him. Adam looked at the two pickup trucks ahead, unable to tell if anyone in them was paying attention to him. He could only see vague shadows in the trucks, unable to see the faces of the people inside. Everything seemed to stop. There was no sound, only tension and fear spreading. The feeling of being watched grew stronger and stronger in Adam. He felt like a hunted prey, unable to escape, unable to free himself. The strange man moved closer, walking very slowly, his eyes still not leaving Adam. Each step he took seemed to emphasize Adam's helpless situation. As each moment passed, the sense of danger in Adam became clearer than ever. Adam thinking, voice full of confusion. "I can't believe it. What is this? Why did I fall into this situation?" Even though he knew what he had to do to get out of here, he couldn't move. A paralyzing fear made his limbs numb. Everything around him seemed to be turning into a nightmare with no way out. The strange man now closer, and his eyes were no longer friendly. That cold gaze made Adam feel like he was being pushed to a dead end. Adam felt a chill run down his spine, and in that moment, he realized that he had stumbled into a situation that he could not control. The run from the dark. Adam felt a chill run down his spine, as if a wave of numbness was spreading through his body. Despite the darkness, the tension in the air seemed to sharpen the dim light from the pickup truck's headlights. The cars stood still, as if waiting for something, and the sense of danger Adam felt was growing stronger by the second. He couldn't face these strangers anymore, couldn't stand still, couldn't wait for something bad to happen. Every beat in his chest accelerated, as if signaling that his survival was in danger. Adam couldn't think anymore. There was no time for reason. He could only do one thing: run. He quickly locked the car door and, without looking back, ran out of his car, his heart pounding in his chest. The night was dark and silent, but full of menace. Adam didn't dare stop. It was a natural reflex, an uncontrollable urge. In that moment, he didn't think about being trapped or discovered. He just rushed towards the forest ahead, where the dense trees could help him hide. The night was thick, but the black silhouettes of the tall, ancient trees stretched up, forming a natural wall blocking the lights from the pickup trucks. The space around him was even quieter, but Adam felt like he was being watched, as if the surrounding darkness was following his every step. Adam whispering, slightly choked with tension. "I can't believe this is happening to me. Why me? Why do I have to be in this situation?" He didn't dare look back, didn't dare stop to think. Every step he took was like a battle with himself. His legs felt like they were going to freeze from exhaustion and fear. But he knew that if he stopped, if he hesitated even for a second, he would have no chance to escape. He put all his strength into his legs, running like he had never run before, only hearing the pounding of his heart in his ears, his own panting, and the rustling of leaves under his feet, the pain in his muscles, the cold sweat soaking his shirt. But Adam had no time to feel the fatigue. He had entered the forest, and before his eyes there was only dim darkness. Everything around him seemed to blend together. The cold wind blowing from the forest made him shiver. The smell of wet soil and dry leaves filled the air. But what made Adam more confused was the feeling that there were eyes watching him from the darkness of the forest. He turned his head, trying to assess the situation, but only saw darkness. There was no one chasing him, no sound, but there was a distinct feeling that they were close, that if he let himself slip, they would find him. They could be following him silently, or they could be watching from afar, waiting for him to tire and let his guard down. Adam thinking, voice full of fear. What should I do? Run further. But where am I running to? He had no answer for himself. This forest, although it seemed like a safe place, made him feel even more isolated. The ancient trees towered like dark clouds reaching into the sky, creating dark shadows on the ground. Although the forest was quite dense, Adam still felt something strange surrounding him. It felt like someone was watching from afar, like invisible eyes were following his every move. With extreme tension, Adam began to run faster, as if the forest was his only path to survival. He did not dare to stop. Each cold wind blew past, making his hair stand on end, making him feel like he was running in a nightmare with no way out. Each breath he took became more rapid, as if his body was gradually unable to continue. After a long while, when Adam began to feel exhausted, he stopped in a large bush, trying to hide himself and listen to his surroundings. Although he did not hear any footsteps, he still did not dare to relax. His eyes were still attentively observing the distance, hoping for some sign. His panting mixed with the air, but there was still no movement around. The whole forest was still silent, as if it was keeping some secret. Adam thinking, voice trembling, I hope I have gone far enough. But will they ignore me? This question had no answer. And in that moment, Adam realized that he had fallen into a situation where there was no way to know how it would end. Darkness surrounded him, as if swallowing all his hope. Fear and robbery. Adam couldn't stop running. Even though his legs were starting to feel tired, each step seemed to dig into the ground. The hard branches stabbed into him. He stumbled over rocks and tree roots in the darkness, making him unable to stop. The blurry figures in the night seemed to be chasing him, making the air around him thick, as if every gust of wind carried the scent of danger. A sense of panic enveloped him. Every small sound made him jump, as if someone was approaching. All his senses were on edge, afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape this situation. At this moment, a voice in Spanish suddenly rang out behind him, faint and distant, but still enough for Adam to realize that there were at least two people approaching him. The sound of hurried footsteps and soft laughter mixed together, getting closer and closer. Adam turned his head in panic, but saw only dense darkness and the trees casting shadows on the ground. He couldn't see anyone clearly, but the voices still echoed in the night, making him feel like he was surrounded. Adam thinking, voice trembling, "What? Where are they? It can't be them. I have to go faster." Cold sweat soaked his forehead. His breathing was steady but rapid, as if his body was starting to react to extreme fear. Footsteps were still heard from behind, but they weren't close anymore. Adam told himself that he had gone far enough, but the anxiety still didn't leave him. Suddenly, the siren of the car he had left behind rang out in the quiet space of the forest. The siren screamed incessantly, breaking the silence of the night, startling Adam, who quickly turned around to look. He could hear the sound clearly from the parking lot behind, where his car was still standing alone. In the dim darkness, the honking continued, incessantly, as if to say that something was wrong, something had been violated. Adam exhausted, panting. "What's going on? It can't be. Why would someone touch my car?" He couldn't stand still for too long, couldn't let himself think any longer. But the honking kept going, getting louder and louder, increasing the tension in him. He didn't know if it was the panic or the feeling of losing control, but Adam felt as if a storm was slowly closing in on him. He didn't know if anyone was chasing him, but the honking continued to sound fiercely, like a sign of imminent threat. Adam hurried on, his hands reaching forward as if trying to find somewhere to hide. But each step seemed to pull him further away from safety, further and further into darkness, further and further from any help. For a brief moment, Adam wondered if he could escape the mysterious people, or if the sounds were leading him to an inevitable end. As the car horn continued to blare, Adam turned to look again. This time, in the darkness, he could make out two figures approaching his car, and one of them was waving as if to someone waiting behind. Adam felt his heart stop because he knew one thing: they were coming to do something bad. Adam gasping, almost in disbelief. No way. I can't let them do this. He couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't just stand there and hope that these people would ignore him. Adam started running faster, his legs losing all strength, but his fear still pushed him forward. A small ray of hope flashed in his mind. Maybe he could find another way, a way out of this danger. But just as Adam thought he could escape, a figure appeared right in front of him, blocking his path. The strange man with the strange smile appeared again. This time he was no longer friendly. The strange man's eyes flashed with a cold light, as if he had been waiting for Adam. The strange man snickering, his voice hoarse. "You can't escape, my friend. This is only the beginning." The whole world around Adam suddenly became blurry. A feeling of fear rose in his chest, as if all escape routes had been blocked. He couldn't say anything, couldn't do anything but feel that this nightmare had no end. Turning back in disappointment, Adam walked slowly down the deserted road, the faint yellow light from the street lamps shining on the ground. He had walked a long way, a feeling of fatigue settling in his body. But as he approached the parking lot, the familiar feeling of his car from afar seemed to dispel all his fatigue. His car was still there, no sign of anything wrong. Adam smiled tiredly, his eyes closing slightly, as if he was about to return to his own space. But as he got closer, his smile quickly faded. The sight before him made him stop. unable to take another step. His car, once the only source of comfort in the chaotic days, now looked terrible. The rear window was shattered, the broken glass glinting under the lights, like wounds that would never heal. The door was thrown open, and all the familiar things that he had considered an indispensable part of his life were gone. Bags, personal belongings, clothes, shoes, everything was gone. A feeling of loss and pain filled his heart. He stood there, unable to believe what he was seeing. Adam, angry, disappointed. It can't be. All my belongings, all my clothes, shoes, everything. How did this happen? He looked around. No one was near. Everything was quiet, but inside his head it was like a firestorm. The feeling of anger and disappointment made him unable to stay calm. He walked closer, his hands clenched, trying to control the anger that was rising. Adam sat down, looking at his car as if it was betraying him. All the memories, all the things he had put into it, were now erased. He bit his lower lip, not letting the tears fall. The sense of loss in his heart was like a wound that could never be healed. Is this all I have left? He asked himself as he sat quietly by the car, his mind reeling with endless questions. Everything I've worked so hard to build is gone. Why? These words kept repeating in his head, like a never-ending echo. He couldn't understand why he had to endure these losses, when life was already difficult enough. His limbs felt useless. He stood up, closed his eyes for a moment, and took a deep breath. At these moments, Adam felt like he was being pushed into a dark corner from which he could not escape. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment and pain that surrounded him. It was an uncomfortable feeling, like he was abandoned and had nothing left to hold on to. The police and the end. The cold night wind blew, causing dry branches to fall on the sidewalk. The flashing lights from the police car illuminated the broken glass on the ground, creating a cold and stifling atmosphere. Adam stood there, tired and disappointed, with no hope for a good outcome. He looked at his car, the debris on the ground like traces of a life that had just been taken away. And what he felt was not only a material loss, but also a mental exhaustion. A moment later, another police car drove up and stopped beside him. Two policemen got out, a middle-aged man with a stern face and a young woman with a determined gaze. They approached Adam, and one of them began to collect information from him. Male police officer looking at Adam, voice quiet. Can you tell us exactly what happened? We need to know all the details. Adam, trying to stay calm, turned to look at the police officer. Although he felt tired, he knew that this was his only chance to find the culprit. He took a deep breath, then told the whole story from beginning to end. From the time he parked in the Wendy's area, until he discovered the broken car window and the stolen belongings. He described the strange men, but couldn't remember their faces clearly because it was so fast and unexpected. Female police officer opening her notebook and listening attentively. We'll check the recent CCTV cameras. There should be something from there. Just a few minutes later, the male police officer returned with information that Adam didn't expect. He pointed to a mobile screen, which displayed footage from the Wendy's surveillance cameras. Male police officer, stern voice. We checked the CCTV. This is the footage from when the suspects approached your car. However, what is unusual is that the strange man's license plate is fake. Both the pickup trucks we saw had no license plates. Adam looked at the screen, trying to identify every detail, but nothing was clear. The attackers were too clever. They had covered every trace, making it almost impossible to track them down. The male police officer continued. We will do our best to find these robbers, but they may have escaped, leaving no trace. Adam felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at the police officers, his heart in turmoil. his disappointment beyond words. He tried to stay calm, but his heart was pounding. All he could do now was wait and hope for a miracle that he did not believe in. Adam whispering, feeling desperate. "I know. I just hope they get the end they deserve." Adam's words echoed, but no one seemed to hear. The police continued to gather information, checking the surrounding cameras and searching for clues. But inside Adam, the feeling of despair grew, like a wave sweeping away all hope. He felt like he was stuck in a spiral with no way out, with no justice for what he had lost. The police might find the culprit, but Adam knew that, no matter what, he would never be able to get back what he had lost. Reminiscence and belief in karma. After leaving the scene of the incident, Adam returned to his home, which had always been the place where he felt safest. But today that home no longer brought a sense of peace. He entered the room, closed the door and stood still, his hands hanging down by his side. The air in the room was suffocatingly quiet. Only his sigh echoed in the empty space. He walked to the window and looked out. Night had fallen. The sky was dim and dark. Only the yellow lights from the neighboring houses flickered through the window. Adam felt like he was seeing a strange world, a world where everything could change in an instant. He placed his hand on the cold window frame, looked at the distant lights, and his mind returned to what had happened during the day. Images of the broken car, the broken glass on the ground, and his disappointment at seeing everything taken flashed through his mind. Adam closed his eyes, trying to push away the painful emotions, but he couldn't. Those events couldn't easily pass through his mind. He wondered if he had been naive to believe that everything could continue peacefully. Was what he had experienced today just part of a chain of events that he couldn't control? Adam looking out the window, thinking, sometimes what we do isn't random. There must be a deeper reason. And I believe that karma will not let these people off the hook. Adam's words rang out like a whisper in the dark night. He couldn't deny that, for a moment, he felt like he was being attacked not only physically, but also mentally. Everything he believed in had been violated, and there was nothing he could do to change it. But what he could do now was believe in something greater. He believed that in this world, no one could escape the consequences of their actions. Adam continued to look at the twinkling lights in the distance. He remembered the stories people used to tell about karma, about justice that no one could escape. Even though everything seemed dark and unfair now, Adam believed that one day those who had caused him pain would pay. No matter how they ran, hid, or denied, what they had done would always catch up with them. No one could escape what they had sown. The feeling of resentment and anger gradually subsided within him. He no longer felt like a victim, but someone who stood firm on the foundation of faith and justice. Adam did not need to seek revenge directly. He understood that the universe had its way, and those who had done evil would not be able to escape the punishment of karma. Adam whispering, "No one can escape the price of evil. One day those people will pay. We cannot escape karma." He stood there, looking out the window with deep eyes, no longer filled with disappointment or pain as before. Although he could not get back what he had lost, he felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His belief in karma had helped him regain peace of mind. Adam knew that life may present challenges, but in the end, everything will fall into place. And when it does, the wicked will not be able to escape the punishment of their actions. The end. The story ends in a thick fog, covering everything around, as if time and space have lost their clarity. This fog is not only a natural phenomenon, but it is also a symbol of the unresolved things in Adam's life. It is vague like the hauntings in his mind, the unreleased souls, still lingering, following his every step. Every night when Adam sits alone in the dark room, the dim light reflecting on the window, he feels the presence of ghosts. The memories of the robbery, The blurry faces of strangers and the betrayal in his heart still linger endlessly. But deep inside him, another feeling also begins to form. It is the torment of the decision he made when he decided to help that strange man in his moment of confusion. Adam knew that, whether he found the culprit or not, the regret would never go away. He had opened his heart, given his trust to a stranger, and that trust had led to consequences he could not change. He remembered the mysterious look in the man's eyes, the hasty squeeze of his hand as he said, "Everything will be okay," and then quickly disappeared into the darkness. Adam wondered if he could have realized the truth sooner, if he could have seen the warning signs in every gesture of the man. Every night, when the night fell and darkness enveloped the house, Adam heard his own sigh. The wounds in his heart seemed never to heal. He blamed himself, wondering what he could have done differently to avoid these consequences. The loss was not just about the stolen items, but also about his trust, about the recklessness of a wrong decision he had made. Every time he looked out the window, the dim light from the street lamps piercing through the mist, Adam felt as if there was a shadow standing in the darkness, watching him from afar. It was a ghost of the past, of mistakes that could not be erased, souls that could not be freed, not only from the robbers but from within himself, where the knots could not be resolved. Unanswered questions kept lingering in his mind, and he knew these questions would never have answers. Time passed, but Adam still could not escape the feeling that he was being haunted. Every time he went out, he saw strange cars, strange faces, and could not stop thinking about the man he had helped that day. Was he a fraud all along? Or was there a reason why he had to deceive Adam, making him part of the bad guy's plot? This question kept going around, never having an answer. Every step Adam took felt heavy, as if he were carrying a heavy burden that he could not lift. The ghosts of the past continued to surround him, and he could not escape them. His life, though physically able to continue, was like a torrential downpour, with no way out. And as the night fell and the fog rolled in, Adam stared into the darkness, telling himself that he would never find peace. The ghosts of the past, the ghosts of regret and wrong decisions, haunted him, not only about the robbers, but also about himself. The loss was not just material, but a part of his soul that had been forever changed. Conclusion. We always wonder, does karma really exist? Or is it all just a coincidence of inexplicable events? Can every action, no matter how small, push us down a path from which we cannot return? Or are events simply random, nothing more than chance and fate? This question is not easy to answer, and perhaps throughout our lives, we will never have a definite answer. Adam sat in the dark, looking out the window, where the light from the street lamps was weakly filtering through the fog. He knew that his story was just a small part of a vast world, where the decisions we make can change everything. But sometimes they don't. Events happen without warning, without apparent reason, and only when everything is over do we begin to wonder, what could I have done differently? Despite our best efforts, life sometimes teaches us painful lessons that have no answers. Decisions that seem simple to us can lead to consequences we never imagined. Every decision, every choice, whether made in the moment or after careful consideration, carries with it an infinite possibility of the unpredictable. Life is not always fair. We cannot always find comfort in the outcomes we expect. Adam's decisions, whether made out of kindness or trust, eventually became a burden he could not escape. And in regret, he learned that sometimes not every choice leads to good results. Although we can justify ourselves with good reasons, there is no denying that every action, every decision, has profound impacts that we cannot foresee. Life is simply a series of decisions we face, Adam thought, and not always with pleasant consequences. Every day we are faced with choices, with paths that we cannot turn back from, and can only move forward, not knowing what lies ahead. And sometimes the wrong decisions, the naivete, are the hardest lessons life can teach. When it's all over, the wounds will heal, but the lessons from those painful decisions will remain, etched in the mind. The haunting memories of the past will not easily disappear, and even if Adam can forgive himself, he knows that he will never forget what happened. And perhaps the most important thing he learned was acceptance. Acceptance that life is not perfect, that we cannot control everything, and that sometimes bad decisions are just part of the long journey of life. Does karma really exist? Adam wondered again with a distant look, as if searching for an answer in the dark outside. Or is it all just an inexplicable coincidence? But perhaps the answer doesn't matter. What matters is that we keep going, keep facing the challenges, the decisions, and the consequences that we cannot control. And no matter how hard or how much loss we have to endure, we must continue to believe that, one day, everything will fall into place.